Welcome to Politically Basic. I'm your host, Kyle Campbell. We're breaking down the basics of all political issues and current political events so that you get to decide. With me on the show today, the country's favorite sheriff, Chad Bianco. He's the Riverside County Sheriff, elected in 2018 and re-elected to that role in 2022. In this role, he serves as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Riverside County. You know him as the tough-on-crime sheriff who has diplomatically opposed the government's bureaucracy over budget cuts in public safety, lowering the bar for criminal acts such as theft, the governor's handling of the coronavirus mandates, the low bar of education for our children, and the pressure to take away citizens' Second Amendment rights, going viral on social media videos speaking boldly and truthfully on these issues. As sheriff, he oversees the county's 5 jail facilities, 6 court buildings, a civil bureau, the coroner's bureau, public administrator's office, 12 patrol stations, 17 contract cities, 4,200 dedicated employees, and an operating budget of just over $1 billion. As the married father of 4 and grandfather to 4, Sheriff Bianco is a powerful example of service above self, giving meaningful guidance and direction as the sheriff's department engages in unprecedented positive cultural shifts to best serve the residents of Riverside County. And big news, he's just announced a run for governor of California. So we have a lot to talk about here. Sheriff Bianco, thanks so much for joining me on Politically Basic today.
Absolutely. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, it was just over about a month ago that you announced your candidacy to run for governor of California. And there was a lot of buzz around that announcement before you made it. People were very hopeful that you would run. So what made the decision final for you?
I think it was a culmination of too many things. It was a culmination of that really push from almost every corner of our state. Last year during Prop 36, I traveled the state. I talked with a lot of communities, a lot of groups about the importance of passing Prop 36. And that conversation always came up. It was, you should run for governor. You have the platform for it. You have the voice for it. And it was just one of those things that just kept snowballing. And then as we got closer to the beginning of the year, I saw all of the same familiar faces and names that were going to run for governor that are really responsible for putting us in this position in the first place. And I just couldn't let it happen. We need a different direction. We need a drastic change of policy, of direction. We need to start caring about our state rather than political ideologies. And it has to start with the leadership at the top.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, California is this giant state. We have the highest population of any state, almost the largest in size, still the world's 5th largest economy. It's like running its own country. So this is a huge, massive job. How are you feeling about taking that on in that role?
I don't even think of it like that. I think of it as an entire state in desperate need of an emergency fix. And that truly that's my life. For 32 years now, the life of a law enforcement officer is you answer a call of an emergency and you have to fix it for the people that are involved in that emergency. You either rescue them from a situation, you rescue their property, you arrest the person that's hurting them, but you make it to where those parties, there's an outcome for those parties that's suitable really for both parties. And all I'm going to do is take that to a state level. I see an entire state, every aspect of our state, every aspect of our population is hurting. And we're all on the verge of leaving the state, the best state in the country, and we're all on the verge of leaving. And I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. It certainly is a big state. I'm realizing very quickly that the state is large, but it's not going to be anything that I don't do every day anyway.
That's so true. Riverside County is massive, and you have a lot going on. I mean, just in your intro right now, everyone got to hear how much responsibility you have as sheriff. And I love that connection of a sheriff running for governor, because I think sometimes people don't realize that your job, yes, it's law enforcement, but you're a protector. You're caring for the people. You're taking care of so many people in your county. Every single resident who resides there, you are responsible for making sure they're kept safe. And so there is a lot of crossover with the position of governor. Do you think about it that way too?
I really do. And of course, it was all about public safety when I took over this role. But when I became the sheriff, I changed the motto of our agency and the mantra of what we believe and what I want deputies to believe in their day-to-day service. And that is our motto is service above self. And the reality of a successful law enforcement officer is every single day we have to make sure that we care about other people more than ourselves. Our lives are we put our lives in danger for someone else, most of the time people that we don't even know, and we don't think about that. We think about the situation that they are in, and we care more about them than we care about ourselves. And I think it's just natural for me, and I think that that is something desperately what we're missing. I think the leadership role that I really do believe that California is looking for someone that they can actually look to and say, I can believe that person. That person is truly looking out for my best interests. And we are starving for that. We haven't had that for a long time. I think that that's the number one aspect of a leader is caring about others more than your own agenda, more than your own politics, more than your own personal self. And that is me. That is the perfect description of me. And I think I will resonate well with voters who are just starving for someone that actually cares.
Gosh, you are so right. I mean, I was only in your county for a short time, but you're kind of a legend there. People love you. And so I think it absolutely is resonating, and they see that service over self motto lived out in your work day to day. And you're exactly right. The people of California are starving for that. Now, we just saw this play out with the devastating fires that happened in the Palisades area, the Eaton fire. And it really highlighted, on top of everything else kind of going sideways or going wrong in the state of California, these fires really highlighted failures in leadership, right? And so, how has that sort of added to your drive to run for governor?
Yeah, it was right before the decision, and I'll be honest. I mean, this is a big undertaking for us to embark on, and in a small bit of selfish way, I was trying to talk myself out of it. It was like, I have the perfect job. I live in the perfect county, perfect employees. My department is great, and then we have the fires, and I watched a complete failure of leadership from the top to bottom. I mean, you have a governor that did absolutely nothing except try and the proverbial CYA at the end, and then you have a mayor that was completely absent, that had absolutely nothing to say or no real constructive help. Then we realize that not only is it the failure in leadership at the time of crisis, but it was a failure in leadership that caused the crisis. We have fires every single year. It is something, it's a fact of life in California. It's really a fact of life everywhere. But the problem with California is administratively, from the top down, we have regulations and laws that absolutely prevent the mitigation of these major, massive wildfires. And this one is a perfect example. They've been warning for years that a fire in this area or in these types of areas, unless they do some type of mitigation before, which is cleaning out the wood, cleaning out the debris, the old brush, to limit the amount of fuel that these fires would have, they have told us that this was going to happen. And the leadership in this state doesn't care. They have an agenda, and that agenda does not include the welfare of Californians. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't. And I think that this fire, I think people finally started to see that. And when you, after the fact, when you just do away with the regulations that put us here in the first place and say, oh, we're going to remove all these so we can clean up and rebuild, it has to beg the question, well, why were they there in the first place? You knew they were there in the first place, and you could have done this 2 years ago, and we wouldn't be here. 16,000 people wouldn't have lost their homes. And it highlighted so in your face and so tragically just the catastrophic failure of leadership in this state and the failure of policy decisions and agenda. We absolutely must do something different, or we really will lose our state.
Mm-hmm. After those fires, while they were happening and directly after, there was a lot of blame placed, laid at different elected leaders' feet, different people's feet. And we talk basics here. So who really has responsibility over how bad the Palisades and Eaton fires got? I mean, you mentioned, yes, we have fires all the time here. We should be prepared, but there are kind of a lot of elements to what happened, right? You know, water in the fire hydrants, water missing from reservoirs, forest brush not being cleaned up, response. There were fire trucks that were down for maintenance that should have been active. Maybe some of the training that was going on in LA Fire Department and surrounding fire departments. What would you say, who's really to blame there, and who should we be holding responsible?
Yeah, ultimately, it's easy to push blame downward, and you saw the mayor fire the fire chief. That right there is a complete failed leader. That she showed everyone that she has absolutely no leadership ability. When you're looking at an issue and you have to figure out the problem, you don't look downward, you look upward. How did that problem happen in the first place? So ultimately in California, every single aspect of things going wrong, and when I say that, pretty much everything other than our weather in California is going wrong. And you have to look at the Democrat Party. It's the Democrat Party, the Democrat liberal progressive agenda, that all of them are they've sworn themselves to, and they blindly follow this progressive liberal agenda that appeases special interests at the expense of the rest of Californians. And so when you look at all of this, every single aspect, whether it's failure to clear out the brush, whether it's water not in our reservoirs that can't feed the hydrants, whether it's the fire department had no trucks, this is a complete failure of the leadership of that city, which is and has been run by Democrats for decades. And the number one role and responsibility of any government is the protection and the security of its residents. That's police, that's fire, and then infrastructure comes next. That's water, that's reservoirs, that's water to drink, that's water to fight, that's roadways, all of the infrastructure that we need to survive as a civilization. And the Democrat liberal progressive agenda places public safety near the bottom of everything. They only hold it in a higher regard in an election year when they start saying that they're pro-public safety. But the reality is they've cut the budget so far. They take the budget away from public safety and infrastructure, and they put it toward their special agenda projects that truly we are finding out now this money just disappears. And overall, you have to look at it from a 36,000 foot level and see that overall, everything that they are doing is failing. You mentioned earlier that we are the fifth largest economy in the world. We have great people here. We have great businesses here. The Californians are resilient. They are hardworking, and they want to make a difference in their lives. They want to make a difference in their families' lives, to the point that we are the fifth largest economy in the world. We were more than that at one time. And I think the progressive agenda is happy with saying we're the fifth largest economy in the world. And when they say that, they don't have to talk about the complete failures that they have laid on Californians. And my position is, well, that's all great, but why aren't we number 4? Why aren't we number 3? Why aren't we trying to do something within our state to increase our market value, increase our GDP, increase the wealth in California? And we should be number 2. We'll never be number 1 because America is number 1. But why isn't California number 2 or number 3? And that is going to be my goal when I get there, is every single day you have to make yourself better. You cannot be complacent. You cannot come to work and say, you know what, I'm good. We're going to be mediocre today. We're just going to cruise through the day and be average. And we'll see what we do tomorrow. That's not a way to live. That's not a way to run your government. And that's what we're finding right now in every aspect. Our government is complacent. It doesn't care about Californians and its policies, its procedures, its rules, and its direction is to the detriment of regular Californians who live here.
Mm-hmm. What a great time for you to run for governor, because everything you're saying is spot on and really is in alignment with what's happening and what we're seeing on a national scale. And there have been calls for DOGE, this Department of Government Efficiency, to actually be brought to California and to have California specific DOGE, because particularly here in this state, we're seeing this play out in kind of a more sort of devastating way when we have these failures of government employees and failures of policy, failures down to the local level, in ways that we just saw with these fires. And so I love that you're not just wanting to kind of course correct for the state, but you're wanting to grow and build and make it better than it's been in a very, very long time. So thank you for having that desire and that perspective. I think that is exactly what the state needs right now. But in talking about getting her back on track, right? You mentioned earlier about Prop 36. So I want to talk about that, because I think that what we have had to deal with as a state, particularly over the last 4 years, has really impacted what's going on with regard to crime and public safety. So tell our listeners, what is Prop 36?
Yeah, Prop 36 was a proposition that we had on the ballot last year that would fix some items that occurred 10 years ago in Prop 47, and it's a public safety fix, and it's the three biggest items of what we usually see on, if you turn on the news. We see homeless issues all over the place. We see theft issues all over the place, theft and gangs and those types of issues, and drugs. So drugs, theft, and homelessness were truly amplified and or caused or exploited in 2014 with the passage of Prop 47. And just to back up tiny little bit more, so for everyone to realize, in the public safety realm, this all started in 2012. The downfall of public safety in California started in 2012 with AB 109. I'm sorry. AB 109 was a bill that was passed so California could shirk its responsibility with its prison system. We had too many prisoners and not enough prisons. And rather than build more prisons, they just released all the prisoners. And they either released them back into our streets, into our communities, or they released them into county jails. And what that did for county jails, who were never meant to house long-term prisoners, is it filled up our jails with state prison inmates. So now we have to release the criminals that were in jail that are normally just local criminals that would do less than 1 year of jail time. And so the jails were absolutely overcrowded and overburdened from 2012. In 2014, we were lied to by our state. We were lied to by our Attorney General, ironically, Kamala Harris. And there was a ballot measure, a proposition, Prop 47, on our ballots that they named the Safe Streets and Safe Schools Initiative. The reality was it had absolutely nothing to do with safe streets. It had absolutely nothing to do with safe schools. It was a lie on our ballot. It was a lie in our ballot book that was written by Kamala Harris, Attorney General at the time. And we voted for it resoundingly. It was like 60-some%. We voted for this because it sounds good. Yeah. I want safe schools and I want safe streets. And they played on our emotions. They played on our apathy and our lack of research into what we were actually voting for, and that bill was passed. And when a bill is passed by voters, it holds tons more weight than a bill that is passed by our legislature. So a bill that is passed by voters must be changed by the voters. The legislature can't fix it. They can't make laws that counteract or are counterintuitive to a measure passed by the voters. So what we saw in 2014 with Prop 47 was basically most felonies became misdemeanors, misdemeanors became infractions or non-crimes, and everything went crazy. Drugs became legal. You can go backwards and look at the drastic rise in homelessness because of Prop 47. And Prop 47 took away our ability at the time to force people into drug rehab. When you were arrested for drugs before Prop 47, you had an opportunity to either go into rehab, willingly go into rehab, or we would put you in jail. Well, that's a pretty good choice. Pick rehab, then you don't have to go to jail. Prop 47 took that away, so there is no teeth in any type of drug crime anymore. So you just get a ticket and then you don't go to court, you don't show up again. And when you don't show up, you just get another ticket. It really took all of our teeth out of, there's no bite in our bark anymore. And so with Prop 36, we had to fix those things. We had to fix theft, which theft became a misdemeanor, and you had to steal over $1,000 before it became a felony. And it was $1,000 on separate attempts. You couldn't aggregate them together and say that you went back to back stores and stole $600 from each store. Those are two misdemeanors. Those are not felonies. But before, it used to be a felony because the limit went over 400 and we could charge you with a felony for that. So in the last 10 years, we have seen public safety is just it's straight downward, and crime and everything else is on the rise. There is a massive increase in crime, particularly violent crime. Theft is through the roof. One of the aspects from our world that our legislatures won't listen to us is unreported crime. People don't report crime anymore because they know there's not a consequence. Yeah. They know nothing's going to happen, and they know there's nothing that law enforcement can do, and they feel sorry for us that we're busy. And so they say, well, it was only my lawnmower that got stolen, or they broke into my house and it was just some old jewelry that I didn't need. And so they don't even report it anymore. Big box stores, they don't report it anymore. It's gone. It's too much of an expense. It's just a cost of doing business, but that cost of doing business gets put onto us. So I apologize for that long direction, but I had to tell you why we had to have Prop 36, because Prop 36 is taking away those three issues that were really destroying us in the public safety realm, which was drugs and alcohol causing a homeless issue, the drug-induced psychosis that causes these people to be living on the streets, rotting in their own skin. And we absolutely must force them into help because they don't believe they need help. And so Prop 36 will allow us, after we arrest them so many times, that now we can force them into a rehab program and we can get them sober. We can get them making good decisions again. And then the second part was the theft. It's making theft a felony again. And if you're going to steal from us, if you're going to steal from our stores, you're going to be held accountable. And if you don't stop, you're going to go to prison. So it added a bunch of penalties again. We're actually adding consequences to bad behavior, and we're going to have to make a difference. The only thing I need to caution now as we move forward is the Democrat machine, led by our governor, was completely against Prop 36. Prop 47 is their baby. They have doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on the success of Prop 47, lying to us, because everyone, all you have to do is look around. Every single Californian knows Prop 47 was a failure, but they believed it was a success because it was theirs. And the ego will not allow them to change. And so they are completely against Prop 36. They ran a lot of ads against Prop 36. Newsom, they even tried to run a competing measure against it to try and confuse everyone. In the end, Californians spoke loud and clear. 70% of our state, every county in our state voted for Prop 36. That includes Los Angeles and San Francisco. That says a lot. Mm-hmm. And the problem that we're facing now is our governor will not fund it. So there's no money being put toward Prop 36 for these programs, for this effort into housing them in jail, to putting people back in prison. And they're going to do everything they can to make it fail. So then they can just point and say, oh, look, they were wrong. We need to go back. Being hard on crime is not the answer. But the reality is we can't be hard on crime until we have the resources to be hard on crime.
Thank you so much for breaking that down and explaining it, because what you're saying is so important for people to hear the history of what happened clearly. It's funny to me, maybe it is to you, that people like to accuse Donald Trump of being a dictator. And we're kind of living under this dictatorship day in and day out here in California. And that is just one example of the voice of the people and the vote of the people being disrespected. We have voted for so many things, paid taxpayer dollars into so many initiatives and props that end up not being completed or being withheld, as you're talking about with 36 here. And so the people do know. Another issue I think is really frustrating for some, and you just alluded to it a couple times here, is that the propositions, the marketing around them is horribly confusing for people. And I think that I know there is legislation around that. There are regulations around that, but the state has gotten very crafty, I'd say, in the last several years about wording these things in very false in a very false manner, and so that you do think that you're voting for safe communities, safe streets, and it's the opposite. It is literally the opposite of what you're voting for. So what do you think about that? Is there a way to remedy that going forward?
Yeah, there is, and I think you are being very nice in your description of that because in my world, I'm in the law enforcement world, and everything is truth and dishonesty. But that's what we deal with every single day. We have to find the truth of the matter. So my description is they are very disingenuous and dishonest in what they're doing. You may call it crafty, but the a little bit further in that craftiness, they're crafty like a fox, and it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, and they're lying to us in order to get us to go along with them. And the bad thing about a proposition for us, for the people, is Prop 47. They absolutely knew they had all kinds of bills that they wanted to do those things with, but a different legislature can change those laws. Mm-hmm. And so they knew that they had to get the people to vote that in, because then a future legislature would not be able to change it and make it better. And so we won. I mean, we were successful at it, and we were able to have a loud enough voice. People are more willing now to say, look, we don't believe government anymore. We're being lied every single day to, and it's government that's doing it. And they're begging for truth. They're begging for someone that they can trust. And we all know that it is not government. I mean, you can't turn on the TV or watch a podcast of a certain person without just lies coming out of his mouth. And I mean, we just sit and it's like, what are you talking about? We live this. We know you're not being honest. But right now he's in a remake to remake his positions to better his odds at a presidential run. Mm-hmm. And it truly is the epitome of politics, that why people don't like politics. We've gotten accustomed to being okay with politicians lying to us, because they all do. And that's the feel, that's the perception that we all have. And so it just causes us to just be apathetic to the fact that we're being misled and they're being dishonest. And I think we have to actually change that. And then to your point, yes, when we get to the point where we have a legitimate, honest governor that has integrity, we will absolutely know that these things are being followed, and these rules are being followed in not lying to the public, and that they're being told the truth and the consequences of both sides. They have to be able to make an informed decision. And when we limit that ability for them to make an informed decision, we're manipulating the outcome. And that's not a way to lead. That's not a way to run our government. What we are seeing is that's a way to destroy our government.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's so disrespectful to the people that a certain person has sworn to serve. You know, the position of governor is, again, it's a position of service. And we're seeing quite the opposite. That podcast is something else. You know, Charlie Kirk just went on and he had a lot of people criticize him for going to Gavin Newsom and sitting down with him. You know, his perspective was, well, listen, this is a sitting governor of one of our largest states. And if he asks, I'm going to come and sit down with him. But he issued a warning after. He said, don't underestimate Gavin Newsom. And I think that was very wise that he did that, because, you know, the guardrails are kind of off when it comes to him. We've had several years now, 8 years of Newsom here. And we see the gaslighting, we see the lies, you can see them very clearly. And now we have this podcast where everything is being turned and being spun. So it is absolutely right to call that truth versus lies. And I certainly think the American people and people of California are very, very hungry for what's real and transparent and true and right. So again, love hearing your perspective on that. And I want to ask you, Sheriff, about one more prop that you have been involved with and spoken out on, and that's Prop 6 regarding inmate forced labor. Can you talk to us a little about what Prop 6 is and where it stands right now?
Yeah. So the reality is it's truth again. And it's playing on your emotions to get you to try and go along with what they want. And in the end, their want is extremely sinister. So what that was a bill, and they labeled it as the anti-slavery bill, and changing the Constitution to take out slavery and indentured servitude and all of those things. The reality of the people in our jail system is they are being punished for crimes that they committed, and they are serving their sentence. They are serving their they are atoning for their crimes by being in jail. And there are certain things inside the jail that we allow them to volunteer for. And it's only the best of the worst that we allow volunteer. Is we don't have mass murders and rapists and everything like that can volunteer for these work crews or things like that. And that happens in every prison and in every jail. And this bill wanted you to believe that they are being forced into these labor camps, and they are being forced to work, and they are being, all of those things. And they highlighted the fire crews that we have hundreds, if not thousands, of inmate firefighters that we train to help us battle these blazes. And they are all volunteers. They all want to be able to get out of the prison and go out and work and go out and help. And besides that, then they're learning that team environment. They're working with a team. They're a part of a team, and they're learning a skill. And there are private firefighting agencies that can hire them when they come out of prison and out of jail. So they have a benefit to that. But the other side wanted you to believe that it's indentured servitude and it's forced labor camps. And what they wanted you to do was remove some language from the Constitution that would then allow them to make a bill, a law that would force us to pay inmates to work. So we would have to force inmates to clean their cell. We would have to force inmates, when we use them, to distribute food trays to the rest of the day rooms and to the housing units. We would have to force them, we would pay them to work in our laundry crews. We would have to pay them to work in the fire camps, and paying them minimum wage. So there's two things that go along with that. In the end, it is absolutely impossible to pay all the inmates to clean their cell, to pay them to work on kitchen crews and fire crews. It would bankrupt the criminal justice system. That is the end result. If you can, I have had an attorney to my face tell me, if you can't afford it, then you have to release the inmates. That is their goal. And so we luckily got that. We shot that down. We did not vote for that. The people were smart enough to see what was going on, and we were able to get the word out. So that proposition was beaten, but now we have a bill that's in legislature right now, and they're playing on our emotions again because of the fires, and they're saying that they want to pay inmates to work on these fire crews. The reality is this: we cannot afford in our correction system to pay those inmates minimum wage to work in these fire crews, and the result will be there will not be any more fire crews. And so they know what the outcome is. The people that are responsible for these bills, they were telling them the consequence of these bills, but in the end, their agenda is no one will be in jail, no one will go to prison, no one will be held accountable for crimes. That truly is the agenda. That their version, the sick and twisted version, they call it public safety reform. And that is their version. Their version of public safety reform is cops are the criminals and criminals are victims, and we're going to keep them all out of jail. There's no consequence for committing crime. And this was a perfect example. This Proposition 6 was a perfect example of an underhanded, dishonest way that they could bankrupt our criminal justice system.
Gosh, it's really scary. I love hearing from you. You're so well spoken, and you're detailing this and you're explaining it so beautifully for us today. And I thank you for that, because I think that people who don't live in this state kind of have an idea of what has happened over the last few years since some of these propositions went into effect, and they've seen this beautiful, productive, incredible state just deteriorate. And you see the footage of LA, you see the footage of Skid Row, the tent cities, people on drugs, on fentanyl, just it looks horrifying, but it's actually so much worse than that if you drive through some of these parts of the state that have just completely been taken down, and everything that made them beautiful and special and desirable for people to come here. And so many people have worked their whole lives to come live in California. It was sort of been stripping that from us, and it's been really, really devastating to watch. So I'm very grateful to you for kind of walking us through that. And it is devastating. One thing that I want to mention about the inmate firefighter opportunity is that when these fires in the LA area, the Palisades fires, were happening, of course, I'm on socials all day long. I'm a mass consumer of information through any medium I can get my hands on. And of course, being in, the county just north and having experienced so many fires and really keeping up on that. But I read an account from a former inmate he's not an inmate any longer, but he had gone through that program and had an opportunity to serve as an inmate firefighter. So he detailed his experience. It was really incredible to read, because what he was saying was, don't listen to this hype about us being, forced to serve. He said, we wanted to, just as you were just saying. They were so eager to get in there and help and feel that they were working towards some kind of collective good outcome. He said it was one of the best experiences of his life, and it put him on solid footing after he was released to then, again, as you just mentioned, be able to have that opportunity to work. And it was just such a positive thing to read about. And so I love hearing from you on that too. And I think, at the end of the day, people inherently want to kind of fulfill that God-given desire, especially men, to help others and to serve. It goes askew sometimes in some people, though.
You're absolutely right. And that is a fact of our life. And it's not just men, it's women too. And I cannot tell you how, there's been hundreds of people that have reached out to me, particularly since it became more, that I became more vocal and I was on the news being hard on crime and everything else, and reaching out to me from that they've changed their life. They were in prison or they were in multiple times in jail. And they've told me, do not stop. Do not stop doing what you're doing. We need to be held accountable. And if I was not held accountable, I wouldn't have changed what I was doing. Fire crews. I've had people that have been involved with fire crews because we at one time we had one in Riverside County. They don't have enough inmates now to have them. So we don't have it anymore, but we were reached out to, and basically it taught them responsibility. It taught them self-worth, and it gave them, it was a horrible, they may have grown up in a bad situation. They found themselves in criminal activity and they were never held accountable. And then finally they find themselves in prison and they get this opportunity to go out and work. But then it teaches them that they have to rely on other people. These other people are relying on them. There's a sense of self-worth that comes from being able to set out and accomplish a task and help somebody by doing so. And it changes the way they believe. And it makes them say, look, I've been screwing up forever and I can change and I can make a difference. And they do. And I'm not one of those people in favor of just lock away someone, throw away the key. I think everybody makes mistakes. We all make mistakes. Some are worse than others and some suffer a bigger consequence. But in the end, you can always decide that you're going to change and you're not going to do that again. And you're going to repent from what you did and make a difference in somebody else's life. And I think that's how we have to look at it when we look at people that are going to jail.
Mm-hmm. So true. Same with the homeless community in a lot of ways too. They're down, but we shouldn't count them out because everyone has different circumstances.
we have a man here that was homeless for almost 18 years.
Wow.
And he's on the speaking tour now. And we arrange him to go speak to groups. And he tells of his story, and he tells of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times where he was contacted by law enforcement and asked for help or offered help. But to him, he didn't need help. He was exactly where he wanted to be. He was fine. We were the ones that needed help. He was good. And eventually he got to a point where he found out that his daughter had died, and she had died months before. And he didn't know because he's on the streets using drugs and really not caring about anything. And he said that he came very, very close to committing suicide. And he realized, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I have thrown away my life for this. And he stopped. And for him, he said it was cold turkey. He said the next time law enforcement asked him for help, he said yes. And he took it. And he's been sober and clean ever since. And now he's a productive member of society. And that's all they're looking for. When they're most of the homeless, probably 90-95%, if not more, of our homeless are suffering from drug addiction or alcohol addiction. And you can't make a rational decision when your brain is under the influence of drugs and or alcohol. And so if we would take the time and the effort to force them, you have to force them to get sober, then they can make those rational decisions. So it is everyone finds themselves in a tough situation. And it's up to the rest of us to help them get up, not give them money to get them up. It's help them along the way. It's give them mental support, give them that personal friendship support and the opportunity to change their lives. And most of the time they will.
Yeah, you're so spot on. I love hearing you talk about this. It's not a one size fits all solution, and you're so uniquely built and positioned for this next step of leadership because you have seen it, you've lived it, and walked through these experiences with people who have been at their lowest. You've seen how the agencies work, how the programs work. You've seen caseworkers and counselors and all of these moving parts work in tandem. And that experience is so absolutely needed for someone who is running for governor. So I want to thank you and I commend you for doing this work. It's really tough. I mean, I don't personally know, but I do a whole lot of work in these spaces that are adjacent to the work that you're doing. And I just want to pause and just thank you for doing that because you're helping a lot of people. And again, it's setting you up really, really well to run for governor and hopefully to be in that position. Our governor now, Governor Newsom, he's taken a very clear and very strong stance recently, sort of positioning California as an anti-Trump state, including recently dedicating $50 million, essentially just to fight the administration and everything that it's doing. And now you know better than most the issues that we have in this state, right? Immigration, crime, goodness, housing. I guess, are we still a sanctuary state? I don't, what's happening with that? What do you think? What do you think about that move from Newsom and your thoughts on just a complete wash of taking an anti-Trump position?
I certainly hope we can. And I think it truly highlights the absolute complete failure of the Democrat Party. If you are ever going to fix something, there has to be some really soul searching, some inward looking responsibility that you say, hey, how did we get here and how are we going to get out of it? You cannot look at any aspect of California and say that we're doing it right. We have the highest taxes, the highest regulation, the worst performing schools with the most money spent, the most business regulations. Our businesses are fleeing the state. They're not moving to the state, they're fleeing. Everything is failing here. Our economy is not doing well. It's the cost of living is too expensive. Our gas taxes, highest taxes in the country. We pay more for gasoline than anyone. Our food is more expensive than anyone. It is more expensive to live in California than any other state, and our infrastructure is failing. California is failing, and it is our government that is failing. It is not our people. It's not Californians. We are resilient. We are hardworking. We are good Americans. It is our government that is failing. And now you have a government that is saying, oh, look, we have a president that wants to make things better. We're going to use $50 million to Trump-proof California. What I would like to be the governor to progressive-proof California. I would like to be the governor that opens up, that's not going to proof anything. I would like to be the governor that says, I'm going to failure-proof California. And instead, they're fighting with a president while the rest of us are still suffering. They still can't clean up their burned down buildings and their homes in the Palisades, but our legislature only cares about President Trump and Trump derangement syndrome and fighting him tooth and nail with lawsuits and the court system and our taxpayer money. How much could $50 million have done for Palisades or for Altadena? How much could that have done for drug treatment centers instead of NGOs that are stealing all of our money and housing no one? It's almost, I don't even know a word to describe it. It is extremely childish. It's like we're in middle school again, and you have somebody on the middle school playground that they've rounded up together, and they're going to just throw a little temper tantrum, and now nothing's going to get done, and no one's going to get along on the playground because this tiny little group over here is throwing a temper tantrum.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's offensive, and the word abusive has been kicked around quite a lot recently, particularly since these fires, because the taxpayers have been paying into things like filling reservoirs that didn't happen. And then you have 24, at last count that I heard, people lose their lives in fires that sure, maybe still would have started, but certainly wouldn't have escalated to the point of being so devastating and so disastrous as they were. So a lot of bad things have been going on in the state of California, but particularly with the budget and with the numbers. During a major disaster, one of our biggest and deadliest fires, you have the 50 million. We don't know what that's going to. There's no accountability. And I believe a few years back when an organization that wanted to look into the books and just take a peek at where some of our taxpayer money was going, put forward a proposal or request to do that. Governor Newsom regulated that was not going to happen and that was inappropriate. And, last summer, June of 2024, this budget proposal was showing a potential cut of $185 million from the public safety budget, while on the flip side, we've got $26 billion put toward fixing and solving homelessness. That's gotten worse by a significant percentage. We have this bullet train to nowhere. That's my particular favorite. And when I say favorite, I hate it with the passion of 10,000 suns, because it's so much money. And everything is flipped on its head, right? The money that should be going to public safety is going to these projects that are not happening. And really, where is the money? Are you going to be able to get into office, Sheriff, and figure out where all of our money has gone?
Yes, I will. And when I get there, that has to be the number one priority. It is not anything new that we have been screaming for years and years and years to stop the government waste. We finally have a president that is stopping the government waste, and government is up in arms over it. There is something inherently wrong when the government who is being audited is screaming bloody murder, saying, no, you can't do that. No, you can't take away our money laundering scheme, and fighting it tooth or nail. The public is demanding a better government. They are demanding something better. I say this all the time in my government. I have been very fortunate here in Riverside County, in that when I came in, everyone believes that we're Republican here, and I've had a Democrat board since I took over as a sheriff, and right now it's a 4-1 Democrat board. And the difference is we work together, and I will have to say that one of them is not sane, but at least the other ones they actually care about their constituents. They care about the public, and they use common sense when they make their decisions. And so I will always have 4 votes now, even though it's a 4-1. I will have 4 votes still because that one is off the rails. He is this progressive left that is part of been destroying our state. He was an assembly member. But when I get there, I will do the same thing that I have done here. It is for the general public. This, if you remember, a long time ago, this was years ago, and some people might not be old enough, but there was this big, disaster in government because somebody found that there was this $650 toilet seat, and that's the price. It was highlighting the cost of government. That is true. That it is the red tape, the bureaucracy, and the machine that is government causes everything to be astronomically higher. Mm-hmm. And I was able to convince our board of supervisors to allow me to change the way the sheriff's office works. I'm an independent elected official with my own sheriff's office. It's not a county office. It's my office. And so they fund my money. And I explained to them what I wanted to do. I explained to them how I wanted to change things. I would not break the law, but I would work within the confines of the current system that we have set up to save all of this money. But the caveat was, I'm going to save millions of dollars, but I'm not giving it back to you so you can waste somewhere else. I'm going to prove to you that we can save all these millions of dollars, but then we're going to buy all the things that we need for public safety that you're not letting me buy in the first place because you say we have no money. And they didn't think we could do it. So they allowed me to make these changes, and we've done it. And I've saved them tens of millions, if not over hundreds of millions of dollars now in the last 6 years that we have been able to fix buildings. We've been able to put roofs on buildings. We've been able to buy better equipment, more updated state-of-the-art equipment, because they've allowed me to keep that money from the money that I was saving. And it is so productive in our county that they're changing other departments to match and mirror what we're doing. And I am going to take that to Sacramento. I am going to make sure that we don't have $650 toilet seats. And you can't lower people's taxes without first cutting the spending. We absolutely must have to cut the billions of dollars that are being wasted that we can't even account for. Those are going to be the easy ones to stop. If we have billions of dollars left over, we either have to build up our infrastructure and our public safety, or here's a concept. How about we give it back to the people that made it and let them spend it and let them save it and let them buy things that they deserve because they're working so hard.
That makes too much sense. I'm so sorry.
No,
it's so refreshing. Yes, that makes perfect sense. And aren't we back in this era of common sense thinking and running our government that way? And you've got it, tried and tested. And so again, it just positions you so well here. Governor Newsom, he's off. A lot of people have said they feel he has pretty much abandoned the state at this point. He's eyeing a 2028 run, and he knows he's wrapping up his time in California. He's pretty much got 9 toes out the door. Who do you think will be the Democrat candidate running for governor against you?
That's a good question. I think it's going to be Vice President Harris. Mm-hmm. I think that there were a couple of slip-ups in some of the Democrat candidates that have made statements already about her that they obviously know something is happening, and they know that that's the way things are moving. And so I believe that I believe she's going to get in probably early summer, maybe midsummer, and these other ones will bow out. And that's really how the Democrat Party works. They're very good at it. They've gotten very good at how they pick their candidate, and they do it unilaterally, and then everyone gets behind them. Mm-hmm. The reality of Vice President Harris is the majority of people think she is completely incompetent and not capable of doing this job. But that doesn't matter for Democrats because they have a successful platform plan in that they don't fight amongst each other. I mean, look at where was the debate that she had to get the nominee? There wasn't one. They just picked her, they installed her, and that's how we ended up having to choose between President Trump and Vice President Harris is because there was no debate for her to get there. There was no democratic process for her to get there. That's not how the Democrat works. And so they believe that she has a very good voter base here, that the result of this last election, 60-40, roughly around there for her instead of President Trump, they believe that those same people are going to vote for her for governor. But I think they're sadly mistaken. And I think it's going to backfire on them, but they've already set this into motion, and it's going to be her. But in the end, for me, it doesn't matter which one of them or which 10 of them run. The bottom line for all of Californians is we all know that they are the problem. They are the ones that put us here, and you do not get to cause a problem just so you can come up with a solution. Life doesn't work that way.
Well, and you're still trying to solve problems that Kamala Harris caused in California from years ago. So it'll be highly interesting if she does run. She made a comment maybe a few weeks back, and it struck me, and I think a lot of people, and particularly right now, because it's such a contrast to what you're saying and your mentality in this kind of theme of service over self. She said something to the effect, and I'm going to paraphrase this, of, well, I might run for governor of California because wouldn't it be great to be the first, woman of color governor of California? And I just stopped and thought, that's one of the most selfish reasons I think I have ever heard for somebody wanting to go into a position of public service, particularly at that level. And it really rang so irresponsible. But again, in what you're saying and the way you have such a heart for people and such a heart of service, I part of me hopes that she does. I got to tell you, Sheriff, because I think she has a lot of explaining to do for some damage that she's done in this state. So we shall certainly see. But I've so enjoyed our conversation today and getting to hear from you. It wasn't nearly enough time, and I hope that you will come back on the show so that we can keep talking about your just tremendous experience, service, and the excellent solutions that you're putting forward for this state. So thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. It was great being here, and thank you very much.
Yes, and if people want to find out more about your campaign, your run, and support you, where can they find you?
Yes, thank you very much. I would have gotten in trouble had I not said that. BiancoForGovernor.com. And you can, anywhere on their website, you can see a 30,000-foot level of some what we're going to do in a platform. But certainly you can sign up to help and sign up to, of course, donate. This going to be a mass undertaking, especially fighting the Democrat system. And so any amount that you can donate will help. We have a nice, cute little button there that's $20.26. So you can make an investment for 2026 that we can save California.
I love that. The left is good at fundraising, but not so good at messaging these days. And I just enjoyed everything that you said today. And I would encourage you just to continue to get out there with your message, because I think it's spot on for California.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Politically Basic. We'll continue breaking down the basics so that you get to decide. Be sure to check us out at politicallybasic.com and follow us at Politically Basic so you don't miss an episode. And we'll see you next time.